We're doing some hot college football talk here.
There you go.
You mentioned that just because you have deep NIL pockets like these new schools like BYU, Oregon, or whomever, not traditional blue bloods, as it were, doesn't mean you instantly win, and that is true.
Yeah.
But my question about Oregon is this. Where do you think they are if status quo remained? In other words, this whole NIL deal didn't happen. Revenue sharing won't happen. Oregon was on that trajectory long before NIL.
Yes.
But in the old school college football, where do you think Lanning and company are?
I think they're still solidly in the top 12. I think NIL helps Oregon.
Well, it better help them.
It will. I mean,
it already does.
It already does.
I mean,
what an opportunity.
My question is how much? Because, like you said, it doesn't mean you instantly win. Because I feel like Lanning. I mean, that's kind of an insult to Lanning. It's like,
it is.
Dude, it's not just about money. And of course, people will reduce it to that because people hate Oregon and the Phil Knight thing.
It's an easy, lazy narrative.
It is, exactly. And it is a lazy narrative. That said, how do you quantify what that means for where Oregon's at right now?
Yeah.
Because it does coincide with a rise in the program to really
But now, see, I disagree because...
Well, I guess that's not true because they were in two title games.
They played for 2 national title games.
Yeah,
now, they were still... They were still buying...
They have more talent
D'Anthony
now,
Thomas didn't come here for free.
So, right. But that's what I'm saying. So this new age even though it's the same, it's different.
It's different. So I think Oregon has been on a steady trajectory, and the last piece to this puzzle is winning a national championship. And I think NIL, like if we're putting a percentage on it, I think NIL helped Oregon 15%. And when you already have played for 2 and you're already considered a solid top 10 program, you're talking about, very marginal difference between the truly elites and just the elites. And I do think that NIL can maybe bring that last 10% that Oregon needs. So I think Oregon will benefit from NIL because I think they do it. You take all the recruiting stuff that Oregon has, all the advantages with Nike. It's one of the probably 3 or 4 coolest, sexiest programs. You talk to recruits. I hear that time and time again from people that are in the recruiting ranks that Oregon is just a sexy school for kids. Now you throw in the fact that they aren't going to get outbid for kids, that they are going to be on par with any offer that someone can make a kid. And then they did go get a coach that, how do I put this? One of the reasons they hired Dan Lanning is because they saw from Mario Cristobal that this can be done better. They saw from Mario Cristobal that, unlike Chip, because when Chip was here in Bilotti, they had tremendous success, but they didn't recruit the way that Mario did. Mario came in and brought the Alabama model to Oregon and said, we can get the Kayvon Thibodeaux. We can get 5-star kids here on a regular basis. It does not have to be a once-in-a-blue-moon thing with Jonathan Stewart and Haloti Ngata. We can get kids like this. We can be a top 4 or 5 recruiter. So when Cristobal left, one of the reasons they went with Dan Lanning and they weren't willing to go back, you remember the Josh Wilcox thing? A lot of people wanted Wilcox, and they were like, he will not recruit. Justin, excuse me, not Josh. Justin.
I can't believe they would hire Josh Wilcox.
That would be
as their coach.
That could be
problematic. But I got to tell you,
it'd be a hell of a ride.
I am here for that.
But one of the things was they did not believe that Wilcox had the structure in place to recruit that way. So one of the reasons they went and got Dan Lanning, and Dan Lanning went and basically brought the GM from Texas A&M, who had just signed at the time the #1 recruiting class of all time at Texas A&M. They wanted to bring an SEC model of program building and recruiting and that sort of attitude to Eugene. And when you couple what Dan Lanning and that staff does with that SEC mentality, and you throw in the fact now that you can bring the money to it with all the sex appeal that Oregon has and the facilities and Nike and all of that, you have created something that had already been built into a phenomenal program. And I do think that can be the thing that puts them over the top. And I know last year didn't end the way they wanted to, but it was the #1 team in the country, undefeated, won the Big Ten. And then you ran into a buzzsaw at Ohio State at the wrong time in the playoffs.
I think it's interesting.
If you see any good players, tell them to come here.
Thank you, Dan. I think it's interesting. You said the SEC mentality.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with that. And Dan Lanning is that. I mean, I was reading an article today where they were calling Oregon the new Georgia.
Yeah.
What is it about the SEC mentality? They always just say it just means more. I mean, look, the proof's in the pudding. They get the best players in the SEC.
Yeah.
Or at least they used to. What is that? Like, is it the bigger budgets in SEC recruiting? Is it that they put more emphasis on recruiting? Because everybody around the country has always wanted to recruit.
Yeah.
Right? So in other words, if Dan Lanning came from, so he came from Georgia, but let's say he came from where he coached a national championship at Notre Dame or somewhere not in the SEC.
Yeah. Michigan.
Is he the same? Because I feel like the tutelage under Kirby Smart is a sum of what makes him great.
I think the idea behind
and Nick Saban.
I think the idea behind it is in the SEC, it's like the rising tide lifts all boats, and that when you exist out in that world, they've always had more money. The recruiting hotbeds are down there, and you could say the same like if you're in the ACC down in Florida, right? When you're having to compete in that world, out on the West Coast, it used to be the only thing you really had was SC, right? SC got whatever they wanted, and then you had UW and you had Oregon kind of rise up a little bit, but the West Coast. If we're looking at the last 40 years of football, there's 3 West Coast schools that matter, and only 3, right? Oregon, UW, and SC by far being the dominant power there, although that has shifted now. When you're talking about in the SEC, you are competing every day and every year with Auburn, Alabama, LSU. And now you throw in Texas and you throw in Oklahoma and you still have, and you're, by the way, you're dipping into Florida to compete against Florida State and Miami, and you throw Clemson in there. I mean, it is just nasty.
So you just have to do more.
You just have to do more
to get kids.
Yes.
You have to be relentless, and that's the attitude that you wanted to bring.
When they went and got Lanning, and I don't want to get into like the too many weeds because some of the stuff I don't know how much they want to make this public. He has there's a system, there's a philosophy that he builds his recruiting around that is, it's like, why are some people better at attracting women, right? Like you like the
well,
guy,
I can tell you that
I don't
because
mind
I'm
talking to
hot.
y'all.
But we all know that guy that can go into a bar,
Just kidding.
or the guy that goes into the strip club and like like he walks out of there with the stripper, and you're like, dude.
Well, hello there.
Well, that's the SEC. You have to have that mentality. And so I do think that more and more programs, as this came about, wanted to go find guys that had cut their teeth in that field. They wanted people that understood this is how Alabama recruits, this is how Georgia recruits, and I'm going to take that mentality and I'm going to go get I'm going to build my roster around people that is the only way we know how to operate, where we don't accept the fact that because we're on the West Coast that we have to settle for 3-star or 4-star kids. No, we are going to be a national recruiter. And you can say what you will about Cristobal. Cristobal started that. Cristobal proved, he didn't have the success that Chip Kelly did or even Bellotti, but Cristobal proved that you can take that mentality and you can bring it to Oregon, and Oregon was not willing to go back.
Yeah.
They were only willing to go forward, and it's one of the reasons, and they found a young guy in Lanning. They said he can keep that going, and Lanning has done it bigger and better than Cristobal.
All right, well, biatches, there is some very hot NIL college football talk. Oh, by the way, wait, I'm not done.
They're fighting for clicks, we're fighting for wins.
I'm not done. No, I'm not done.
You told me that.
How very thoughtful.
Yeah. I wanted to tell you too. So that Signetti's, I love that drop. That
Me too.
that's a good one. Me fake burping.
Fake burping? That was
Yeah, I
real.
don't-
No, that was real.
No, I don't really burp. I've told you this before. I can't burp. I don't burp.
So
They're
what
fake.
The hell?
clearly.
Why are you doing fake burp bits?
Just trying to piss people off. Kinda. Or, fuckink.
Sure.
Here, I'll do it again. That's not real. Come on, that
No.
didn't come from my diaphragm.
All right.
I don't know how to burp.
What were you saying?
I don't know.
You love that drop.
You lost it.
True story.
And to someone's point, like the Texas A&M, how did that class work out? That's the prime example. Texas A&M spent the most money on they said it was the number 1 recruiting class that had ever been assembled in college football, and it went nowhere. And those kids all ended up bolting. So it again proves the point. Just buying a roster doesn't do squat, which is why it's a lazy narrative to say that because someone has money, they're going to be a good team, or that's the reason why they're good. It's a lazy ass narrative. You can buy a lot of players, doesn't mean you're going to do great. Texas A&M is a prime candidate for that.
No, it was the Signetti article where he was saying the biggest NIL schools in football are Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Notre Dame, Miami, and Texas Tech.
Yeah.
Matt Norlander weighed in on that. He's from CBS, and he's a basketball guy.
Yeah.
And he was saying that in the NIL and basketball, it's a little bit more bunched up.
Sure.
In football, the $20 to $25 million schools, now they're saying upwards of $40 million.
Yeah.
There's only a handful of them, and Signetti mentioned several of them.
Yeah.
In basketball, they say that the highest NIL is just over $10 million.
Yeah.
And that's Duke, Kentucky, North Carolina, shocking, but also St. John's, Arkansas, BYU, Indiana, Louisville, Michigan, and also Texas Tech.
Yeah.
And he said there's a bunch in the next tier that are only a couple million behind, and that's Kansas, UConn, Florida, Houston, Purdue,
There's more
Tennessee,
players
USC.
because it doesn't take as much money.
So at the top of basketball, it's really kind of leveled out.
Yeah.
Not everybody's up there, but a lot of the big schools are up there, whereas in football, you still have, 7 or 8 haves and a bunch of have-nots.
It's a lot harder to come up with $30 to $40 million than it is to come up with, 8 to be competitive. It's insane. Well, they even said too, there was one, we talked about this a while ago. Who was the guy that he left Maryland for? What was that doucher's name? He left Maryland for, is it Xavier or Marquette?
Are you talking about the coach?
The coach.
Oh, what's his nuts?
Yeah, old what's his nuts. What school did he leave Maryland for? He went and took a job. I want to say it was at Marquette or Xavier or something like that. And they said one of the reasons was he went to a school without a football program because they can dump more resources into the basketball because they don't have to split the pie.
Where did he go? That guy's name.
Mark Willard? Is
Yeah.
Is it Willard?
Yeah, he was basically bitching about Maryland and not having the resources he needs. So he went someplace and
He went to Villanova.
Villanova. And they're saying
Villanova.
places like Villanova and St. John's could be in basketball. One of the advantages they have is you don't have to split the pie, especially in revenue sharing. You don't have to split the pie with the football team. Whereas if you're at Ohio State, dude, take a back seat, man. Football's coming first and everything else is coming second after that. And you don't have to worry about that when you're at Villanova.
Well, now we can play the applause. Thank you.
Hey.
Thank you. We were great there.
I do.